This is Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist Seymour Hersh. He's been exposing U.S. military and intelligence scandals since Vietnam, and he's got a new scoop. This one, alleging that the Obama administration cherry-picked intelligence reports when it alleged that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was behind the August 21st chemical weapons attack near Damascus. Published in the London Review of Books, Hersh argues the Obama administration failed to acknowledge something known to the U.S. intelligence community. The Syrian army is not the only party in the country's civil war with access to sarin. Hersh goes on to say, in the months before the attack, the American intelligence agencies produced a series of highly classified reports citing evidence that the al-Nusra Front, a jihadi group affiliated with al-Qaeda, had mastered the mechanics of creating sarin and was capable of manufacturing it in quantity. Hersh then argues when the attack occurred, al-Nusra should have been a suspect, but the administration cherry-picked intelligence to justify a strike against Assad. The White House has called Hersh's report simply false, as you'd expect they would. Now, to be clear, Hersh doesn't know who carried out the chemical attack that night. He just knows that for the second time in a decade, the President of the United States was willing to take the country to war using intelligence that could be flawed.
I certainly don't know who did what, but there's no question my government does not. And there's also no question that the American president that we now have, a guy I voted for, who has a lot of good things about him, was willing to go to war, wanted to throw missiles at Syria without really having a case and knowing he didn't have much of a case.
But Hersh's report didn't originally appear in the United States. He had to go overseas to the London Review of Books to have it published, where it was extensively fact-checked. Both the New Yorker and the Washington Post rejected Hersh's story. Yep, that's the same Washington Post that right after Colin Powell made his case before the UN on WMDs in Iraq back in 2003, ran an editorial titled "Irrefutable." That editorial said, after Secretary of State Colin L. Powell's representation in the United Nations Security Council yesterday, it is hard to imagine how anyone could doubt that Iraq possesses weapons of mass destruction. And he offered a powerful new case that Saddam Hussein's regime is cooperating with a branch of the al-Qaeda organization that is trying to acquire chemical weapons and stage attacks in Europe. Yep. Now, don't bother looking for that article on the Washington Post archives. It's been completely scrubbed. You see, Hersh's story isn't just about intelligence cherry-picking and manufacturing consent for war. It's about how the White House can get away with this stuff because of the sad state of journalism in America.
You can create a narrative, which he did, and you know the mainstream press is going to carry out that narrative. I mean, it's almost impossible for some of the mainstream newspapers who have consistently supported the administration. This is after we had the WMD scandal, when everybody wanted to be on the team.
And it's in this way that Seymour Hersh actually became part of the story. Again, not just a story of war, but a story of how the media lets the president get away with war, just like they did in Iraq, by silencing those who are speaking truth to power. 2 months ago, the United States was dangerously close to making the same mistake it made 10 years ago in Iraq with another war in Syria, as not one mainstream media outlet in the United States was willing to seriously question the legitimacy of the administration's intelligence claims. And unfortunately, they still aren't willing to. In Washington, Sam Sachs, RT.